feel like I haven't been in the right mental state.
It was just a point in life where I realized, like, maybe I'm struggling with something.
I started to feel anxious at the end of primary school, like grade 5, grade 6.
I've had anxiety ever since I was younger. I think a huge aspect of it was, like, biological. Like, my mom has it, her mom has it, anxiety, depression, just, like, genetic.
When I started to, like, feel my symptoms, I was like, these aren't real. This doesn't matter. This isn't something that's happening. Because I felt like I was pegged as the person who was supposed to be super strong.
I started falling into anxiety and depression, and it just slowly crept up on me.
I started feeling sad all the time, and doing things that I was normally happy doing just seemed like a chore to me instead of something.
I was diagnosed with social anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. And I was hospitalized last year on my birthday after a suicide attempt.
Things were just bad, like, family-wise. So, like, that just reflects on me in every aspect.
It was hard to talk to my parents at the time because they were constantly fighting with each other.
They diagnosed me with severe anxiety and minor depression.
Grade 7 and 8 is kind of when the depression started.
She diagnosed me officially with severe anxiety disorder and depression.
I remember the first time I had a panic attack. I thought I was having an asthma attack because I didn't know what it was.
I've always been an anxious person. Like, I used to have a lot of trouble falling asleep at night.
When I was sitting in my room, like, feeling all these dark feelings, I'd be like, who am I?
I felt empty. I felt like I didn't have any excitement in me, or like, and I wouldn't cry. I just stare, like, into space.
Anxiety to me feels almost crippling. I used to spend hours and hours crying and worrying about absolutely nothing at all.
I went on anti-anxiety medication because I felt like I was kind of, like, losing control of it, and I wasn't able to perform at school the way I used to. I wasn't as social as I used to be. It started affecting aspects of my life.
So I didn't know that, you know. I had a chemical imbalance in my brain. I was like, oh, I'm just sad sometimes, and that's okay. And then I started seeing all these doctors, and there was a never-ending line.
The social anxiety for me was this huge crippler because I think towards the end of grade 11, I was barely attending school.
Maybe it's this. Maybe you have, like, a serotonin imbalance. Maybe it's the dopamine. I'm just sitting here, like a 15-year-old, and I have no idea what they're talking about.
It's not like I would stay home and watch TV. I literally would lie awake staring at the ceiling for hours on end.
Just everything I did felt like labor. Like I didn't want to do it.
I really felt like I had no one to talk to.
Intrusive negative thoughts.
And I definitely felt like super
No one
alone.
understood, like, how I felt.
Because I couldn't enjoy things.
This overwhelming feeling of loneliness.
Like, the way I see myself is not good
During
enough.
grade 11, I still had anxiety. I'd get, like, anxiety attacks. It was mainly in school
Doing
things,
everyday
like the
things starts
teachers
to
yelling.
become really hard. Like getting up, going to school, especially talking in front of people, something I really struggled with.
There were a lot of times where I did feel sad, and I was gonna call, but I didn't because it makes it real, and telling someone, like, just scares me.
After I left the classroom, I just, like, walked to the end of the hall, and I sat down, and I was, like, overwhelmed by everything so much so that I had to, like, close my eyes, cover my ears, and curl up into a little ball. And I think that's, like, the best physical representation I can give you about what it's like, because you just revert back to, like, I need to be taken care of.
He's kind of more like, suck it up, like, just stop crying, go to school kind of thing. So I came downstairs and he asked if I could feed the dog before I left. Like, whatever, even though I was sitting there crying. And he goes out the door and he goes, so you're not going to school today? And I go, no, Dad, I think I'm going to go to the hospital. And then he walked out the door and said goodbye to my mom and not me.
I didn't want her to be there because I didn't want her to worry. I didn't want her to be scared for me, and I couldn't control myself at the point. So I'd just say, like, just get out. It's fine. It's whatever. And I'd be crying, and I'd be sitting in my arm, and it would be really, really red. I wouldn't let her near me or hug me, so she would just sit by my door and wait it out until I stopped
I was
crying.
going to see the triage nurse, and she's like, okay, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I honestly have no idea.
And then I got to the side door, and I remember I, like, stood there, and I was gonna open the door, and then I was still, like, breathing heavy, and then out of nowhere, I just started falling, and my legs, like, gave in, and I fell onto one of the cement barriers in the parking lot.
Just, like, because it's hard to make other people understand what exactly is happening in your head. I can't put everything into words, and so, like, if I were to try and tell someone, what do you even say? Like, hey, I'm not okay.
When I had suicidal thoughts, it was like no options. There was no option left to cope with it.
I didn't see how it could benefit me. It wouldn't benefit my family. It wouldn't benefit other people. So
It got to a point, and that's why I ended up going to the emergency room. It was like, I need help, and I need help now. And the fact that my parents can't afford it, like, it was just, like, scary almost. Like, I felt like I was in a place where I couldn't get help.
It got really bad in grade 10. I was, like, cutting myself pretty badly. I would, like, burn myself. Also, the things I expressed earlier, I characterized as, like, self-harm behavior, abusive drugs, abusive alcohol.
Just, like, saying it out loud. Like, suicide note makes it real. Just, like, because it's never something I would admit.
I'm gonna give this person this thing. That's what was going through my head.
and by the time I got home, I had sorted out everything that was important.
I had a really rough patch in grade 9 where the scars from me went about 2 fingers from my palm all the way up to where my elbows creases.
The reason why I started pinching my hand was because whenever my parents would scream at me, I'd want to like transfer that pain into something else. So like instead of feeling emotional pain, I would feel physical pain, and physical pain would, I guess, feel better than emotional pain.
I didn't want to hurt myself. I didn't want to die, and I told my mom this. I looked her in the eyes and I was like, Mom, I don't feel safe by myself in my own body. And she didn't understand what I meant, and I said, you need to take me to the hospital because I feel like I'm going to hurt myself and I don't want to do that.
My sister was a huge support for me when I was in the hospital.
Right when I thought that, I was like, why am I thinking this? I don't want to die. I just don't want to feel like My this. mom was in the room when I was talking to the psychologist at CAMH, and then I asked her to leave because I felt bad saying in front of her I wanted to kill myself.
And then I just sat on my floor and I just cried because I didn't want to do it. Like, I don't want to die. I love life. And it was really an eye-opening moment for me.
Just because, like, crying, it felt like, and it still does, it feels like it's one of the ways of expressing myself when I can't do it with words because I can't talk to people. I can't talk to my mom. Not that I can't talk to her, because, like, if I were to talk to her, she would be understanding. It's just, like, I don't want to say anything to them because I don't want them to change the way they think about me.
I'm known as the really happy guy, right? So they never thought of me suffering through these things because I'm always positive.
It's really frustrating that someone who's experienced like so much badness that people could somehow think, oh, that's not real, because it hurts so much and it was worse than any physical injury.
There's this stigma. They're over-exaggerating. They're just doing it for attention. Like, they don't really have problems.
You just tell me, like, you have a good life. You can't have all these issues.
I've had teachers actually say, I don't want to hear this, I have anxiety excuse. It's not real. And they said that in front of the entire class.
Hated that feeling. That when people thought, oh, she's just looking for an excuse. I felt that if I did try to talk to my teachers about it, that they may take it as me wanting attention or trying to manipulate them into giving me a good mark.
Now, like, I have really good grades, but I've definitely sacrificed my mental health for them, which is not how I think I should be living.
Maybe someone that is experiencing problems with their mental health is literally right beside you. You never know.
Sometimes people are just sad, and they're just sad. And sometimes people are exhibiting symptoms, and there's no way to know. But I think that if you think that your friend is struggling, then talk to them. Obviously, not everyone is open to having a conversation about mental illness because of the stigma. But you cannot end the stigma if you don't talk about it.
It's people not knowing the difference between, like, minor depression versus major depressive disorder. It's kind of this weird range between people thinking I'm over-exaggerating and that I need to be hospitalized. It's not that bad. It's kind of like a middle, but people can't see it that way.
When I had this emotional trauma, no one cares, but as soon as I get physically injured, suddenly everyone cares because it's something they can see.
I'm still me and I have my issues, but I can still be fun and, like, outgoing and, like, quirky. I don't know. I just don't want to be categorized.
One thing that people need to realize is that people dealing with mental illness are human, and they are stronger than people might think. You don't have to treat them like they're a broken bird.
I didn't open up for the longest time because I felt like I was broken. I felt that, like, people would judge me or my parents wouldn't love me or they would think that they did something wrong, but that's not it at all.
When I was admitted, I was scared of myself. But, you know, when I was in the hospital, I just, as much as I didn't want to be there, I had been admitted before for a physical illness, and I treated it the same way.
Like, I obviously had some kind of imbalance in my brain, but that doesn't make me different from another teenager. Just like because I have a bit more of a struggle with, like, mental health, it doesn't mean that I'm really different.
I also think there's a huge stigma around talking about it because it's a hard subject to talk about. There's a lot of ignorant comments out there about mental illnesses. So as long as you're mindful about what you're saying, it's okay to talk, and it's really important to talk about it.
I told my parents that I felt really lost, that I didn't really recognize myself anymore. I didn't know who I was, and I needed help, serious help. I wanted to go to therapy. I wanted to, whatever it took, because I wanted to be me again.
You really have to want to better yourself, and you have to work, and it takes patience.
You never realize it until after you talk about it, how much better you
Guidance
feel
was just a time for me to open towards him. He was just a time to let go of everything.
Her coming home is what saved me. I called Kids Help Phone, and so knowing that they were available and what they were all about was really good. And I knew that they were anonymous.
The summer was just like the biggest help. Just like having the medication and the summer to get away from everything.
So do what you love, do what makes you happy, because that's all you can ever want.
And then we really started talking a lot, like around the third or fourth time. And then when I started to realize that I actually liked going to therapy.
The school has been understanding. Like, I get extra time on tests, I get reminder sheets on tests. I went to her after class and told her my experience and said I feel very uncomfortable when I take tests. I get extreme anxiety. Is there any way I can please take the test in the hall? And she said yes. That made a huge difference, and my marks went up drastically.
Once my parents got involved in it, got so much better.
My personal thing is to get through it by doing things that are gonna like make me happy.
So I run or play hockey. I just like feel so much better after that. You just come out of it, like the endorphins are running, you just feel so much better, or like just hanging out with friends or listening to music I like.
I had like a lot of support from guidance. There's also like the school social workers who are really helpful.
I've always been lucky that I've realized that I need to like get help.
My dad was actually the guy who's emotionally distant all the time. He sat beside me and he held my hand. He was like, "You are so brave."
In that moment, I realized like my depression and anxiety aren't me. I am myself, and I have anxiety and depression. And one day I will get over it. I can be me, and I can have anxiety and depression, but that's not who I am.
It really helps just talking to someone, even if it's not about your emotions, just about anything. And so having that support from the school has been extremely helpful.
I've just been feeling better. I have a lot of good friends around me now.
I didn't know anyone else felt that. Just like knowing that you're not alone and that like it's a safe space to say what you can really see. Other people are feeling the same thing. It's really like I'm not alone.
My mom even told me, she's like, "You seem happy." And that was all I ever wanted to hear, because that was all I wanted to do to be happy.
As soon as I started to like my therapist and have a connection with my therapist, like it wasn't a chore anymore. It was something that I wanted to do to get better.
I feel like so lucky to have amazing people in my life. Like whether they know what I'm going through or not, it's just so great to be with them.
It didn't feel as like close to me, and I have a few friends going through similar things, and now I'm able to talk to them and open up.
My story, I don't know, while it's sad to me, at the same time I feel like I'm a survivor and that I'm thriving, so I feel really proud of how I've gotten to the place where I am right now.
Some people feel like because I struggle with mental health that they don't really know how to help me, and I don't think they realize that just spending time with me, like small things, help me extremely.
I didn't want to make my friends sad, but after they were just really supportive. When I was having bad days, you know, a hug goes a long way.
It's hard to relate to something that you don't experience, but it does happen, so being respectful and like mindful of what you say and do to other people, like that'll make a big difference on other people's lives, whether or not you see it.
Ever since I reached out to people, I've always believed that talking to someone is the first step to take to get better.
Everyone's struggle is different, and it's really important to support the people that reach out to you.
They're just so supportive of it, but at the same time, they don't alienate me for it.
If you do have an eating disorder, like there's absolutely no shame in it, but it's just, it only makes everything worse. And so my advice would definitely be like, you need to reach out to someone.
I could talk all day about the importance of friends. Like, it just means so much to me, and honestly, that's what made me better. Just like finding new people to hang out with. Finding people who just make me happy and who I can talk to, but they don't need to know about my mental illness to make me smile.
Now I really just know, and I'll always know this, that like whatever you're feeling, it always helps to talk to somebody.
Now, I've also learned that like you don't need to feel isolated, because I can guarantee that there are people going through the same thing as you.
If I know that I can go to you and you'll just sit there and listen, I don't expect you to solve my problems, but the fact that you'll just listen and give me a hug if I need it, it changes so much. I feel like I have someone I can talk to, like someone safe that's not going to judge me. At the end of the day, just ask how someone's doing and just sit there and listen for their response.
This isn't a story that I want people to hear and think, wow, that's really sad. I want people to think, wow, that's inspiring, and I can do that too, because that's what got me through.
This is a battle that is very much fought on the inside, but I think that it's important to be aware that this is a very real thing. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of people have struggled and are no longer here to tell their stories. I think that it's important to share these stories so that people realize that they're not alone.